She lived as human for 10 years, until the Alpha King marked her as his mate. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's dive into today's story. Meet Lira. A woman who has lived for 10 years without knowing her true identity. Raised as a human, she had no idea she was part of something much bigger than she could ever imagine. Lira spent her days in a small village, working hard to support herself, living a simple life, and believing that she was just like everyone else. But there was always something different about her, something that didn't quite fit, like a piece of a puzzle that was always out of place. The villagers loved her, but they also kept their distance, whispering behind her back about the strange aura she carried. Little did Lira know, her true nature had been hidden from her for a reason. One day everything would change. It was the day that Kaelen, the man who had been hiding his true identity for years, stumbled into her life. Kaelen wasn't just any man. He was the Alpha King, cursed and forced to live among the common people in disguise. He had been looking for a way to break his curse, and he knew that Lira, the woman he had been secretly watching for months, was the key. As he approached her that fateful day, Kaelen appeared to be nothing more than a cripple, a man who seemed to be nothing more than an ordinary traveler. He limped into her village, his eyes dark with secrets and pain, and with an air of mystery that drew Lira in. She didn't know who he truly was, but something about him seemed to call to her, like a whisper in the wind that tugged at her very soul. She helped him, not knowing he was the Alpha King. She offered him food and shelter, unaware that her actions would set the course for her entire life. What she didn't realize was that Kaelen's curse was slowly beginning to unravel, and her kindness would be the catalyst for revealing the truth. She had no idea that her simple acts of compassion would soon draw the attention of the most powerful creature in the kingdom. As days passed, Lira felt an odd connection to Kaelen, something she couldn't explain. It wasn't love, not yet, but there was a pull, a magnetic force that seemed to be growing stronger with each passing moment. She couldn't deny the chemistry between them, and yet, she kept pushing the feeling away. After all, she was just a simple woman and he was something else entirely. What Lira didn't know was that Kaelen had been watching her for much longer than she realized. He had been in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to reveal himself. And as that moment drew closer, he knew he couldn't keep up the charade much longer. His true nature was about to be exposed, and with it, Lira's destiny would be forever altered. Kaelen knew that once he revealed himself as the Alpha King, everything would change. His life as a fugitive would end, and he would be forced to claim what was rightfully his. Lira. But he also knew that Lira was special in a way that went beyond the physical. She wasn't just a woman to him. She was his mate, his fated partner, the one he had been searching for all these years. As the Alpha King, he had the power to claim her, but he also knew the consequences of that claim. Would she accept him? Would she accept the truth about who she was? Or would she run from the life that awaited her? These questions weighed heavily on his heart as he prepared to reveal the truth. The time had come. With a deep breath, Kaelen stood in front of Lira, his eyes locking onto hers. "Lira," he said, his voice low and filled with the weight of the truth. "There's something I need to tell you. Something you need to know about who you really are." As his words hung in the air, the world around them seemed to stop. Lira's heart raced, and a chill ran down her spine. The truth was finally coming to light. Little did she know this moment would change everything. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the land, Lira stood frozen in place. Her heart raced, her pulse echoing in her ears as Kaelen's words hung heavily in the air. "There's something I need to tell you. Something you need to know about who you really are." The wind rustled through the trees around them, but it felt like time had come to a halt. Lira's mind spun in circles, trying to process what she had just heard. Who was she really? What did Kaelen mean? Could she really be more than just a simple woman from a small village? Her thoughts were interrupted by Kaelen stepping closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "You're not like the others, Lira," he said, his voice filled with a quiet intensity. You've always been different, even if you didn't know it. Lira swallowed hard, her throat dry as she tried to find her words. What do you mean? She asked, her voice trembling. Kaelen took a deep breath, his gaze softening as he reached out to gently touch her arm. You're not just a human. You were born of the ancient bloodline the same as mine. You are the mate of the Alpha King. Lira blinked, stunned into silence. The words barely registered in her mind as she tried to understand the weight of what he was saying. No, she whispered, shaking her head. That can't be true. I'm just Lira. I'm nothing special. Kaelen's eyes darkened, his grip tightening slightly on her arm. You've always been special, Lira. From the moment I first saw you, I knew there was something different about you. But you've been living in the shadows of your true nature. His words sent a chill through her spine, and she pulled away, stepping back. This is too much. I don't understand, she stammered, her breath coming in shallow gasps. I'm not a wolf. I can't be your mate. Kaelen sighed, his expression softening. You don't need to be a wolf to be my mate, Lira. The bond we share goes beyond what you've been told your whole life. You're destined for this, even if you don't believe it yet. Lira's mind raced as she tried to process what Kaelen was saying. She had always known she was different, but this was something she couldn't wrap her head around. She was just a simple woman, a healer, someone who had lived her life helping others. How could she possibly be the mate of the most powerful man in the kingdom? But why didn't you tell me sooner? She asked, her voice cracking. Why hide the truth from me? Kaelen's eyes softened with regret. I had no choice, he replied quietly. I was cursed, forced to live in hiding. I couldn't reveal myself to you until I knew you were ready. And even now, I fear that the truth will be too much for you. Lira took a step back, her heart heavy with conflicting emotions. She had always lived her life in a small, safe world, never knowing that there was so much more to her existence. So what happens now? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Kaelen stepped closer, his gaze intense and unyielding. Now we fight, he said firmly. We fight for the truth, for our bond, for the future that awaits us. You were born to be my mate, Lira. And together we will claim what's ours. Lira felt a surge of emotions. Fear, confusion, but also something deeper. There was a connection between them, something undeniable. As much as she tried to deny it, she knew that Kaelen was right. Her life was about to change, in ways she couldn't even begin to understand. The Alpha King's curse, the bond between them, it was all too much to comprehend. But as Kaelen's words sank in, Lira felt a shift within herself. Something deep inside her stirred, and for the first time in her life, she felt a sense of purpose, a sense of destiny. She looked up at Kaelen, her eyes filled with uncertainty but also a spark of something new. What do we do now? She asked, her voice steadying. Kaelen's lips curved into a faint smile, and he reached out to take her hand. We begin our journey together, he said softly. And no matter what happens, you won't be alone. I will always be by your side. As their hands clasped together, Lira couldn't help but feel the weight of what lay ahead. Her world was about to be turned upside down, and there was no turning back. But in that moment, she knew one thing for certain. Whatever the future held, she would face it with Kaelen by her side. As Kaelen led Lira through the darkened woods, the weight of their conversation hung heavily between them. Lira could still feel the tremor in her hands from the shock of learning the truth about her heritage. She had always wondered why she felt out of place in the world, why her life seemed so ordinary while deep down, there was a yearning she couldn't explain. But now, standing at the edge of this new reality, she felt overwhelmed by the knowledge that she was destined to be the mate of the Alpha King. She walked beside Kaelen, her mind racing with questions and doubts, but the pull she felt toward him was undeniable. There was something about him, something beyond his powerful presence, that called to her soul like a fire that couldn't be extinguished. She had never known a man like him. She had never known anyone like herself. Kaelen, she finally spoke, her voice trembling slightly. Why me? Why was I chosen? I don't feel special. I'm just me. Kaelen glanced over at her, his expression softening. You are special, Lira, he said, his voice steady. You may not see it yet, but your strength runs deep even if you've never tapped into it. The blood of ancient rulers flows through you. You were always meant to be my mate. The connection between us was written long ago. Lyra's heart raced as she processed his words. It was a lot to take in, too much to believe. She had spent her life as a simple healer, tending to the sick and the wounded in her village. How could someone like her, someone so ordinary, be connected to the throne of an entire kingdom? But I don't understand, she said softly, her voice full of doubt. I've spent my whole life thinking I was human. If I'm part of this ancient bloodline, why didn't I know? Why didn't anyone tell me? Kaelen stopped walking, turning to face her fully. His eyes, the color of a stormy sky, were filled with understanding. The truth was hidden from you, Lira, because it was safer that way, he explained. For years my enemies sought to eliminate anyone who could challenge my rule, and your existence would have been a threat to them. You were kept in the shadows for your own protection. But now the time has come for you to step into the light. We can't keep hiding forever. Lira took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. Her world had been turned upside down in the span of a single day, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for what lay ahead. But deep down she knew there was no going back. Kaelen was right. Her life had been leading her to this moment. She wasn't just a healer anymore. She was someone chosen by fate, and that terrified her. What happens now? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. What do we do? Kaelen's expression hardened with resolve. Now we face the challenges ahead. We fight for our future together. There are enemies who will stop at nothing to see us apart. They'll try to use your bloodline against us, but we won't let them. You're not just my mate, Lira. You're the key to everything. Together we can restore what's been broken, and we can rule with the power that's rightfully ours. Lira swallowed, the weight of his words sinking in. She had no idea what she was getting herself into, but one thing was certain. She could no longer hide from her destiny. She looked up at Kaelen, her heart filled with a mixture of fear and determination. I don't know if I'm ready, she said honestly, but I know I have to try. For you. For us. Kaelen stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. You're stronger than you think, Lira. We'll face this together every step of the way. Just as the words left his mouth, a sharp howl echoed through the forest, sending a chill down both of their spines. It was the sound of wolves, but not just any wolves. These were the enemies Kaelen had spoken of. They had come for them. Without another word, Kaelen grabbed Lyra's hand, pulling her forward. We need to move now, he urged, his tone urgent. As they ran through the woods, Lyra's heart pounded in her chest, not just from the fear of being hunted, but from the rush of adrenaline that came with the knowledge that her life would never be the same. She was no longer just Lira the healer. She was part of something much larger, something ancient and powerful. And as the night air rushed past them, she knew that this was only the beginning of their journey. A journey that would change everything she thought she knew about herself, and about the world around her. As Lira and Kaelen continued to run through the dense forest, the sounds of their pursuers grew louder, the howl of wolves echoing through the trees. They pushed forward, the moonlight filtering through the branches above, casting eerie shadows on the ground. Lyra's heart raced in her chest, not just from fear but from the overwhelming reality that her life had changed forever. She had been a healer, a simple woman, and now she was running for her life with the Alpha King, a man she had only just discovered to be her fated mate. She glanced over at Kaelen, his face hard with determination. His strength was evident, but there was something else in his eyes, something that told her he was not just running from the wolves, but from his past as well. They stopped for a moment to catch their breath, hidden behind the thick trunks of trees. Kaelen turned to Lira, his grip on her hand tightening. They are not just any wolves, he said, his voice low and filled with urgency. They are part of the pack that wants to see me fall. They will stop at nothing to bring me down, and if they can capture you, they will use you against me. Lira felt a chill run down her spine at his words, the weight of what he was saying sinking in. She had no idea how deep this conflict went, how dangerous the world she had stepped into really was. What can we do? She asked, her voice shaky, but steadying with the resolve that was starting to build within her. Kaelen's eyes softened for a moment, as if he was about to say something comforting, but the sound of cracking branches broke the moment. We fight, he said, his voice firm. We fight for our future, for what's rightfully ours. The bond between us is powerful, Lira. We need to embrace it, or we'll never make it out of here alive." Lira nodded, her heart swelling with a mix of fear and something else. Something that felt like hope. She had never been a fighter. Her life had been about healing, about making peace with the world around her. But now, with the Alpha King by her side, she was learning that sometimes peace wasn't enough. She was part of something far greater than herself, and she needed to rise to the challenge. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm not strong like you." Kaelen placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip gentle but steady. "You're stronger than you think," he said, his voice soft but filled with conviction. "You were chosen for this, Lira. The bloodline that runs through you is ancient and powerful. You have the strength to face what's coming, even if you don't feel it right now." Just as his words sank in, the wolves' howls grew closer, their presence unmistakable. Kaelen's expression hardened, and without another word, he led Lira deeper into the forest, toward the only place where they might stand a chance. An old forgotten temple hidden in the heart of the woods. The journey felt endless, the forest growing darker with every step they took, but Lira could feel the pull of the connection between them growing stronger. The bond Kaelen spoke of was real. She could feel it in her bones, in the way her heart beat faster when she was near him. It wasn't just a physical attraction. It was something deeper, something that transcended anything she had ever known. As they reached the temple, Kaelen paused, his eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of danger. "We'll make our stand here," he said, pulling Lira close. "It's the only place where I can tap into my full power. But we need to be quick." Lira nodded, her breath coming in short gasps as the adrenaline surged through her. She had never imagined that she would be standing in an ancient temple, preparing to fight for her life, but here she was. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for Kaelen, for their future, and for a destiny she had never asked for, but could no longer deny. "What do we do now?" she asked, looking up at him. Kaelen took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly. "Now," he said, "we face them together. Whatever happens, you're not alone." The first of the wolves appeared at the edge of the clearing, their glowing eyes fixed on Kaelen, their growls low and menacing. The battle had begun, and there was no turning back. Kaelen's form seemed to shift slightly, his body tense and ready to unleash the full extent of his power. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest, but as she stood beside him she felt a calmness settle over her. She was no longer just Lira the healer. She was a part of something much larger. She was ready to fight. The wolves closed in, their eyes glowing in the dim light of the moon, but Kaelen was ready. He stepped forward, his voice ringing out with authority. "You will not take her," he growled, his eyes burning with the power of the Alpha King. The wolves hesitated for a moment, as if sensing the power radiating from him. But then with a roar they lunged forward, and the battle began in earnest. Lira stood back, watching in awe as Kaelen fought with the strength of a king, his every move calculated and deadly. But even as the wolves attacked, she could feel the bond between them growing stronger, like a force pulling her toward him. As the last of the wolves fell to the ground, defeated, Kaelen turned to Lira, his chest heaving with exertion. "We've won," he said, his voice soft but filled with relief. "But this is only the beginning. We have much to do, Lira, and together we will rebuild what was lost." Lira looked at him, her heart swelling with emotions she couldn't quite put into words. In that moment, she knew that no matter what came next, she was ready to face it, with Kaelen by her side. The sound of the last wolf's body hitting the ground echoed in the clearing, and for a moment, there was nothing but the heavy breathing of Kaelen and Lira. The air was thick with the scent of battle, but it was also filled with an undeniable tension, the kind that came when everything had just changed. Lira stood there, her heart still racing from the fight she had just witnessed, a fight that Kaelen had led with the strength of the Alpha King, the man she had just come to know as her mate. She looked at him, her chest tight with emotions she couldn't fully understand. Kaelen turned to face her, his eyes dark and intense, the weight of their journey ahead pressing down on him. He wiped a streak of blood from his cheek, his gaze softening as he looked at her. "We've made it through the first battle," he said quietly, his voice rough but resolute. "But there's more to come. We have to move quickly, Lira. We don't have much time." Lira nodded, her body still trembling from the adrenaline of the battle. But there was something in Kaelin's voice that made her want to believe in him, in their future together. She had always been a healer, someone who focused on mending wounds and bringing peace, but now she was part of something much larger. A wave of responsibility washed over her, and for the first time she didn't feel afraid. She felt ready. "Where do we go from here?" she asked, her voice steadying with determination. Kaelen gave her a small smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "We go to the heart of the kingdom," he said. "To the Obsidian Citadel. It's the only place we can truly be safe. The only place where we can figure out how to break the curse that binds me." Lyra's mind raced at the mention of the Citadel. She had heard of it, everyone had. It was the seat of power in the kingdom, the home of the Alpha King, the place where every ruler of their kind had once lived. But it was also a place of danger, filled with enemies who would stop at nothing to destroy Kaelen. "The Citadel?" Lira whispered, fear creeping into her voice. "But it's dangerous there. Kaelen, you said your enemies would be there. Why go to the heart of it all?" Kaelen's gaze darkened and he stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "Because it's the only place that holds the answers we need," he said, his voice low and intense. "We can't run forever. Sooner or later they will find us. And when they do, I need to be ready. We need to be ready." Lira felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She had always known that there was danger in this new life she had been thrust into. But hearing the certainty in Kaelen's voice made it all too real. Still, she couldn't turn back now. She had made her choice, and that choice had led her to Kaelen. "Then we go to the Citadel," she said, her voice firm. "Together." Kaelen nodded, his eyes softening slightly as he reached for her hand. "Together," he agreed. And with that, they set off toward the unknown, the dark forest stretching out before them as the night grew deeper. The journey was long, filled with the constant threat of danger. But for the first time since she had learned the truth about her heritage, Lira felt a strange sense of peace. She was no longer just a healer, no longer just someone who lived in the shadows. She was Kaelen's mate, and together they would face whatever came their way. As they made their way toward the Citadel, the weight of their future seemed to press down on Lira. She had never imagined this path for herself, but now that she was walking it, she knew there was no other choice. She was part of something larger than herself. She was part of Kaelen's world, and with him, she would fight for their future. The Citadel loomed ahead, a shadow against the sky, and Lira couldn't help but feel the weight of its power. This was where it would all begin, where everything they had fought for would either come to fruition or be destroyed. As they drew closer, Kaelen's hand tightened around hers, and she looked up at him, her heart pounding in her chest. "Whatever happens," she said, her voice steady, "we will face it together, right?" Kaelen stopped walking and turned to her, his eyes filled with an intensity that took her breath away. "Always," he said, his voice filled with an unshakable confidence. "No matter what comes, Lira, I will always be by your side." With that, they walked forward, the gates of the Obsidian Citadel in front of them, ready to face the destiny that awaited. As Lira and Kaelen reached the towering gates of the Obsidian Citadel, a sense of both awe and dread filled Lyra's chest. The massive stone walls rose high above them, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch into eternity. The Citadel had always been a symbol of power and authority, the heart of the kingdom where the most dangerous and powerful creatures lived. It was a place where only the strongest survived. And now it was the place where Lyra's new life was about to unfold. The path leading to the gates was lined with ancient statues of wolves, their eyes carved with such detail that they seemed to follow their every step. Lira felt the weight of the journey they had undertaken, the long, uncertain road that had brought them here. She glanced over at Kaelen, who walked beside her with the steady stride of a king, yet there was something in his eyes that betrayed a deeper struggle. The battle they had fought in the forest had been only the beginning. There were many more battles ahead, both physical and emotional. As they approached the gates, Kaelen paused, turning to Lira with a look of quiet intensity. "The Citadel is not just a home," he said, his voice low. "It's a place of power, of ancient magic. You may feel its presence as soon as we step inside, and it can be overwhelming. But you need to remember, Lira, you are just as much a part of this as I am. You are the Alpha King's mate, and the strength you have is tied to this place." Lira nodded, trying to steady her breath. She had never felt so out of place in her life. A healer. A simple woman who had always been content with her small life. Now thrust into the heart of a kingdom's power. She could feel the enormity of the moment pressing down on her, but Kaelen's words offered a small measure of comfort. They were a team now, and together they could face whatever came next. With a deep breath they entered the gates. The inner courtyard of the citadel was a vast expanse, with towering stone walls that seemed to touch the sky. There were other figures moving in the distance, guards and servants alike, but all eyes were drawn to Kaelen as he walked through the grounds. The whispers of the crowd were hushed as they watched him, their gazes filled with a mixture of fear, reverence and something else, something that made Lira uneasy. As they walked through the courtyard, the air around them seemed to change. There was a weight in the atmosphere, a sense of ancient power that almost felt suffocating. Lira could feel the eyes of the people on her, but she focused on Kaelen's presence beside her, trying to stay grounded in the midst of all the overwhelming sensations. "Kaelen," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly, "what happens now? What are we going to do?" Kaelen's gaze was steady as he looked down at her, his hand reaching out to gently squeeze hers. "Now we face the council," he said, his voice filled with resolve. "They will be waiting for us. They are the ones who will decide my fate and yours, Lira. We must prove ourselves to them, show them that we are the rightful rulers of this kingdom." The council. Lira had heard rumors of the council, a group of powerful alphas and betas who controlled the kingdom's destiny. They were the ones who held the true power, not Kaelen, not even the Alpha King. Kaelen's position had always been tenuous, his rule challenged by those who wished to see him fail, to take his throne for themselves. And now Lira was to be a part of that struggle. She wasn't sure if she was ready, but there was no turning back. As they reached the grand hall, the doors swung open, revealing a room filled with figures seated around a massive stone table. The council was assembled, their eyes fixed on Kaelen as he entered, his presence commanding the room. Lira stepped beside him, her heart racing as she took in the sight of the council members. Some were familiar to her, others were strangers, their faces cold and unreadable. They were the power brokers of the kingdom, and now they would judge her, judge Kaelen, and judge everything they had fought for. Kaelen stepped forward, his posture straight and regal. "The time has come," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "The time for your judgment has arrived. I am here with my mate, to prove that we are the true rulers of this kingdom. We will not be moved, we will not be silenced. This is our time." The council members exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable, before one of them, an older man with a stern face, spoke up. "You speak of ruling, but you have no power. You were a fugitive, a king in hiding. You are not fit to lead." The words were like a slap in the face, and Lira could feel the tension in the room rise. This was only the beginning. The council had never accepted Kaelen as their true king, and now they were going to make him prove himself. Lira stepped forward, surprising herself with the confidence she felt. "Kaelen is more than just a fugitive," she said, her voice steady, though her heart pounded in her chest. "He is the Alpha King and I am his mate. Together we will restore this kingdom to its rightful place, and no one will stop us." The room fell silent at her words, and for a moment, she thought she had made a mistake. But then Kaelen's hand found hers again, squeezing it gently. His gaze was fierce and full of conviction, and in that moment Lira knew whatever happened next, they would face it together. The council would have to accept them or they would make them. The future of the kingdom and their place in it depended on what happened next. The silence in the room was suffocating, the tension between the council members thick and palpable. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest, her nerves tingling as she stood beside Kaelen, waiting for the council's verdict. Kaelen had spoken with such conviction, yet the council's cold stare seemed to challenge everything they had just said. The older man who had spoken against Kaelen earlier leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing as he looked them both over. "You speak of ruling, but you forget one thing," he said, his voice harsh. "This kingdom is not yours to claim. You are not our king, Kaelen, not without proving you deserve it." Lira felt her breath catch in her throat. She wanted to speak, to defend Kaelen, to tell them that they were wrong, but she held herself back, trusting Kaelen to handle this. Kaelen stood tall, his presence unwavering as he addressed the council. I have fought for this throne and I have earned it, he said firmly, his voice commanding. I did not choose this path, but I will not be denied what is rightfully mine. The kingdom needs leadership, and I am the one who will provide it. This is not a request. It is a declaration. We will lead this kingdom together. His words echoed through the hall, and for a moment, there was nothing but silence. Lira could see the council members exchanging glances, the weight of Kaelen's words hanging in the air. She had always thought that power was something to be feared, something that only the strongest could wield, but Kaelen was showing her that true power came from within, from the belief in yourself and in what you stood for. The older man finally spoke again, his voice skeptical but not without a hint of respect. Very well, Kaelen, he said, his eyes locking onto him. You have convinced us of your strength, but strength alone is not enough to rule this kingdom. You must prove your worth in the eyes of the people, in the eyes of those who will follow you. The council may accept you as king, but only if you earn their loyalty. Kaelen's jaw tightened, but his expression remained steady. I will prove it, he said, his voice low but full of promise. But I will not do it alone. My mate Lira will stand by my side, and together we will show the people that we are the rulers they need. The bond between us is not just a connection. It is the strength of the kingdom itself. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, and Lira could feel the weight of their gazes on her. She had never asked for this, never wanted to be thrust into the world of politics and power. But as she stood there, her hand in Kaelen's, she realized that this was her destiny now. She was part of something bigger, something that could change the kingdom forever. The older man looked at Kaelen one last time before nodding, his decision made. We will accept you, Kaelen Thornridge, as the Alpha King, he said, his voice gruff but final. But understand this, your rule is not set in stone. You must prove yourself worthy of it. Prove yourself to the people, to the warriors who will fight for you, and to the kingdom that you are meant to lead. Kaelen's gaze never wavered, and Lira could see the fire in his eyes, the determination that burned brighter than ever. I will prove it, Kaelen said, his voice unwavering, and I will do it with Lira by my side. Together, we will lead this kingdom to greatness. The room was silent for a moment, the weight of their words settling in, before the older man spoke again, this time with a begrudging respect. Very well, he said. Your challenge begins now, Kaelen. The kingdom is yours to lead, but only if you can win the hearts of its people. The true test begins today. Kaelen turned to Lira, his eyes softening for the first time since they had entered the council chamber. We will do this together, he said quietly, his voice full of conviction. No matter what comes, I will never let you go. Lira nodded, her heart swelling with a mix of fear and determination. She had never imagined herself as a queen, as someone who could lead. But in this moment, with Kaelen by her side, she knew that she had the strength to face whatever came next. Together they would fight for the future of the kingdom, for the future of their people, and for the future of their bond. As they walked out of the council chamber, Kaelen's hand firmly gripping hers, Lira felt the weight of the world on their shoulders. But she also felt something else. A deep sense of purpose, a sense that together, they could overcome any obstacle. The journey was far from over, and the challenges ahead were greater than anything they had faced so far. But with Kaelen by her side, Lira knew that there was no limit to what they could achieve. The kingdom would belong to them, and they would prove that they were the rulers it needed. The days following the council's decision were a blur of action and tension. Kaelen and Lira worked tirelessly to prepare for the challenges ahead, knowing that the kingdom's future was at stake. As the newly recognized Alpha King, Kaelen's presence in the citadel was more powerful than ever. Yet it was clear that the true test of his reign had only just begun. The kingdom was divided, and Kaelen had to win the loyalty of those who still doubted him, those who questioned his strength and the legitimacy of his rule. But with Lira at his side, he felt a fire within him, a strength he had never known before. Every decision they made together brought them closer to their goal, but it also pushed them further into the heart of danger. The whispers of rebellion grew louder, the threat of betrayal constantly looming. Lira knew the gravity of the situation. The council had accepted Kaelen as their king, but the people, his people, remained uncertain. As the days passed, the weight of their responsibilities grew heavier, and Lira could feel the pressure mounting. She had never imagined herself in a position of such power. And yet, standing beside Kaelen, she realized that her role was just as crucial as his. She was his mate, the one who stood by him not just in times of peace, but in the darkest moments of war. One evening, as they sat in the quiet of Kaelen's chambers, the weight of their conversations about the future of the kingdom seemed to hang in the air. "Lira," Kaelen said, his voice low and filled with determination, "we must prepare. The time is coming when we'll have to make our stand. We can't afford to wait any longer. If we're going to rule this kingdom, we need the loyalty of every warrior, every clan. The people need to see that we are the ones who will lead them, that we will protect them." Lira nodded, her gaze steady as she met his eyes. "I understand," she said softly. "But how do we gain their trust? How do we prove ourselves to them?" Kaelen stood up, his powerful form casting a shadow over the room as he moved toward the window, looking out at the distant horizon. "We show them that we are not just rulers," he said, his voice filled with conviction, "but leaders. We fight for what's right, not for power. We protect those who can't protect themselves. We lead with strength, but also with compassion." Lira felt a surge of admiration for him as he spoke. She had always known that Kaelen was more than just a king. He was a leader in every sense of the word, and she was honored to stand beside him. "We will win their loyalty," she said, her voice steady now. "We will prove that we are the rulers they need, the rulers they deserve." Kaelen turned to her, his expression softening for a moment as he walked back to her side. "And we will do it together," he said, reaching out to take her hand. "You are my strength, Lira. With you by my side, there is nothing we cannot face." As they stood there, hands clasped together, Lira could feel the weight of the promise they had made to each other. Their bond was stronger than ever, and no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The kingdom was waiting for them, and their future as rulers was uncertain. But one thing was clear: Kaelen and Lira would fight for each other, and for the kingdom they both loved. The next few days were filled with planning and strategy, as Kaelen and Lira worked with the council and the kingdom's most trusted warriors to prepare for the inevitable conflict. The rebel forces were growing bolder, their actions more violent, and it was clear that Kaelen would have to face them head-on. Lira knew that this battle would be different from any other. It would not just be a fight for power, it would be a fight for the heart and soul of the kingdom. As the day of the battle approached, Lira found herself standing in the war room beside Kaelen, surrounded by maps and strategies. The air was thick with tension, but Kaelen remained calm, his focus unwavering. He turned to her, his eyes filled with resolve. "This is it, Lira," he said softly. "The time has come for us to prove that we are the rulers this kingdom needs. Together we will show them the strength of our bond, and we will fight for the future we both deserve." Lira nodded, her heart filled with both fear and determination. "I am with you, Kaelen," she said, her voice steady, "now and always." As they prepared for the battle that would define their future, Lira knew that the road ahead would be long and fraught with danger, but she was ready. She was no longer just a healer, no longer just a woman who had stumbled into a life she never expected. She was the Alpha King's mate, and she would fight for him, for the kingdom, and for the future they would build together. The battle had raged on for hours, the sounds of clashing steel and howls of wolves echoing through the vast, open fields outside the citadel. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest as she stood beside Kaelen, her grip tightening around the hilt of her sword. The weight of the moment was almost unbearable. They had fought long and hard to get to this point, and now everything they had worked for was on the line. Kaelen's fierce presence beside her gave her strength, but she knew that this battle was far from over. The rebel forces, led by those who sought to take Kaelen's throne, were relentless, but Kaelen's leadership, his unwavering determination, and the bond they shared had inspired their people to fight back with everything they had. As the tide of battle shifted in their favor, Lyra's gaze met Kaelen's, his eyes filled with both determination and love. "We're almost there," he said, his voice low and filled with urgency. "We cannot stop now. We will claim victory, Lira. This kingdom will be ours." Lira nodded, her heart swelling with pride and fear. This was the moment they had both been waiting for, the moment where their fates would be sealed, one way or another. As they fought side by side, Lira felt the bond between them grow stronger with each passing second, The power of their connection a force that neither of them could deny. But there was still much to be done, and as they advanced deeper into the battlefield, Lira could see the leader of the rebel forces in the distance. He was the one who had been the driving force behind the chaos, the one who had challenged Kaelin's rule from the very beginning. She could feel the weight of his presence, the challenge he posed to everything they had fought for, and she knew that she would have to face him. With a final, determined glance at Kaelen, Lira sprinted forward, cutting her way through the chaos until she found herself standing face to face with the rebel leader. His eyes were cold, calculating, and filled with contempt. "You think you can take this kingdom?" he sneered, his voice dripping with arrogance. "You're nothing more than a pawn, Lira. A mere tool in Kaelin's rise to power." Lira's grip tightened on her sword, her determination rising. "I am no pawn," she said, her voice steady and full of conviction. "I am the Alpha King's mate, and together we will rule this kingdom. Your rebellion ends here." The rebel leader laughed, a cruel mocking sound that made Lira's blood boil. "You think you can stop me? You have no idea what you're up against." But Lira was done with fear, done with being underestimated. With a swift, decisive motion she lunged forward, her sword cutting through the air, clashing with the rebel leader's blade. The force of the strike sent a shockwave through her arm, but she didn't falter. She pushed forward, her every movement fueled by the power of the bond between her and Kaelen. The fight was fierce, but Lira was determined to end it, to prove that she was not just the Alpha King's mate, but a warrior in her own right. As she and the rebel leader battled, she could feel Kaelin's presence in her mind, his strength, his confidence, and the love they shared pushing her forward. She was no longer just a healer. She was a queen in the making, a ruler in her own right, and nothing would stop her from protecting the kingdom she had come to love. With one final powerful strike, Lira disarmed the rebel leader, sending him sprawling to the ground. His eyes widened in disbelief as she stood over him, her sword raised high. "This is over," she said, her voice strong and unwavering. "You have lost." As she turned back to Kaelen, she saw the pride in his eyes, the gratitude and the love that filled them. Together they had won. The rebel forces were defeated, their power broken, and Kaelin's rule was secured. The kingdom was theirs. Lira ran to Kaelin's side, and he pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "We did it," he whispered, his voice filled with emotion. "We did it together." Lira's heart swelled with joy and relief, the weight of their struggle finally lifting. They had fought for each other, for their love, for their kingdom, and they had won. The battle was over, but their journey had only just begun. With Kaelen by her side, Lira knew that together, they could face anything. They were not just rulers of a kingdom. They were rulers of their destiny, and nothing could tear them apart. The future was theirs to shape, and with each step they took, they would build a kingdom stronger than ever before, united in love and strength. The journey had been long, but it had led them to this moment, to the beginning of a new chapter in their lives, and Lira knew without a doubt that whatever the future held, she would face it with Kaelen by her side.